HanselMinutes.com. It's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 417, recorded live Thursday, April 3rd, 2014. This episode of Hansel Minutes is brought to you by Telerik, empowering over 1 million developers to create compelling app experiences across any screen. Online at telerik.com. And by Franklins.net, makers of Gesture Pack, a powerful gesture recording and recognition system for Microsoft Kinect for Windows developers. Details at gesturepak.com. In this episode, Scott talks with Jerry Steele about teaching children to program with Hopscotch.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes, and I'm talking with Fitzgerald Steele.
Call me Jerry.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I found your tweet. You're on Twitter, and
surprisingly,
yeah, like everyone else, and you've got a modest number of followers, but you have a tweet that just went insane. What happened?
It really did. It shocked me too. So I homeschool with my daughter, at least part-time, and I wanted to take that opportunity to sort of introduce her to some STEM fields, some programming. In particular, she probably wouldn't get that at her normal school. And so we downloaded a program called Hopscotch. It's an app for the iPad. It's a sort of a visual programming language. There's something similar. It's called Scratch from MIT that they've been working on for a few years. If you're really old like me, you use Turtle Logo in the 80s and 90s. It's really, sort of like an advanced version of that. I can have a character or a number of characters and give them some pretty discrete commands and make him move and turn and twist and things like that. This one's nice because, of course, it's on an iPad, so it's touch stable and things like that. So the lesson for that day was to draw a square, something pretty simple, right? And so I asked her to, okay, talk to me about, like, if you were to explain to me how to draw a square, tell me how you would do it. And so she said, well, I would draw a line to the right, and then I would turn, and then I would draw a line up, and then I would turn. And I said, great. Now make Hopscotch do that. Make this programming tool do that. And it's got a little character. You can say, okay, I want to take this monkey and make him go to the right and then turn 90 degrees. And so through that process, she was pretty successful pretty quickly. And she thought that was really fun. She really, really opened her eyes to, I can make this thing do what I wanted to do. So after about an hour of playing with it, I had her write down, what did you learn about programming? After the last hour, what do you remember from that? And she wrote down a few things, and I took a picture of it, posted it on Twitter, and just because I thought it was kind of cute, and I guess everyone else thought it was cute too. I think she really kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of, some of the insights she had about programming. People seem to connect with.
Yeah, I noticed on the first, she says 5 things I learned about programming. The first one here, she says that computers are really dumb. That is an insight that I think that many adults don't have. A lot of people feel that computers are smarter than them. They sit down in front of the computer and they are intimidated by the computer.
Yep. But when you have to actually tell it what to do, of course we all, probably your listeners know, everyone knows that, computers are pretty procedural. You have to be pretty specific about what you want it to do. And I think that was a great thing for her to learn at an early age, that it only does what it's told to do, and you have to be very specific about what you tell it to do.
I don't know if she I don't know if she meant to do this, but it seems like she bold-faced you. She's writing this in pencil on a piece of paper, but it says they only know what you tell it what to do, which was extremely insightful.
I don't know if she's that smart, but yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then she calls out that it's very hard that she uses the word specific. She immediately recognizes, like you said, that specificity and that attention to detail that's required.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think when we got to the point of trying to figure out how far do you have to turn, right? You can't turn 87 degrees, you can't turn 93 degrees, and so being able to be very specific about move this far, turn this much, move this far again. I think that was a really good lesson for her as well.
Did she have a concept already of the degrees? And it seems pretty sophisticated for a 7-year-old to be able to say turn 90 degrees to the right, or did she trial and error her way into that?
She knows a little bit, so just from different activities, gym teachers tell her to turn 180 degrees, or her Taekwondo instructor tells her to punch at a 45 degrees. And so I don't know that she really understands what degrees are, but she's been told to turn 90 degrees. Mm-hmm. So she gets that. But the nice thing about this tool as well is that it was an opportunity to really talk through some of those things, right? So we got to talk about drawing. We got to talk about geometry. We got to talk about angles. And so it was really an opportunity to, not have a lesson on degrees, not have a lesson on mathematics, but just in the course of trying to do something cool, those topics come up. And it was a nice teaching point as well.
How long did that take from the introduction of the program until a square, and then presumably you kept going until she got bored?
The lesson was about an hour and a half, really. I mean, I think it was probably from startup, this is Hopscotch and this is the characters, to a square on the page. It was probably about 45 minutes to an hour. The program's really simple, touch-based, events, so basically the format is when some event happens, here are the set of instructions to run, right? So you can give it an event like when the app starts, or when someone taps on the screen, or when, I think even like a certain amount of time when you run into something. Mm-hmm. So given some event, what do I do? And she got that concept really quickly. When she, tried something out and it didn't work, she really quickly figured out, I just go back and I can tweak this instruction. And then once she got it, once the light bulb came on, you couldn't stop her, right? I mean, if we didn't have to go somewhere, she'd probably still be doing it. She just really, took to it and just had fun playing with it.
Is it the touch aspect of things that made this different than Scratch? Because Scratch has been around for years. I put together a Raspberry Pi, tried to get my 6-year-old and 8-year-old into Scratch, and they just weren't captured by it. But somehow Hopscotch got them excited.
This one worked for my daughter, at least. I think the barrier to entry is really low. I think you can have success really quickly. So that was really fun. We had a particular task that we had to do, and she went and did it very fast. I think that was effective. Another nice thing about Hopscotch is that they make it very easy to see what other people in the community have done. So right on the homepage of the app, you can download some special versions from people at Hopscotch or what other people in the community. So you can see other people's source code. And once she did that, she found one that drew a picture of the Opera House, the Sydney Opera House, right? So here are the Hopscotch instructions for drawing the Sydney Opera House. Well, she thought that was the greatest thing in the world. So now she could see, this is how you make it do water. This is how you make it do a sun. And so she was able to pull those ideas into her own project. And now I have to take a trip to Australia.
How, is she still sticking with it? Is this something that you think you're going to put into your curriculum on a regular basis?
Well, hopefully I want to keep exposing her to just different STEM subjects, right? I don't know that I'm actually, that she's going to be a programmer or anything like that, but at least I can expose her to it. We did the follow-up lesson we did was on loops, just sort of that sort of constructs of repeating a set of instructions. So I had her go back and do the square, but instead of specifying, line, turn, line, turn, this is what it looks like if you put it inside a repeat structure. Mm-hmm. And, so just sort of slowly introducing her to different concepts. So far, she hasn't been totally bored with it. As she is interested, we'll do more things.
We recently bought a game on Kickstarter called Robot Turtles, which is basically a board game version of Logo, which is how I learned.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
I assume that, I can't tell your age or generation, but I presume that we are contemporaries, and you probably remember Logo.
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in the computer programming in the 80s. That was what I did. Yep.
And I've also noticed that not only with this Robot Turtles and kind of this rise of these kind of basic applications, I'm also seeing activities in which you can teach kids programming in a physical way. For example, mommy or daddy is the robot, and they will only do what you tell them to do. Give them the instructions to get you a drink.
Right. Right. Don't forget to tell me to stop when I'm walking to the fridge, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's the exact kind of thing. I think it's really important for children, everyone to learn, but especially children when this technology is going to be so embedded in their life. And, it's nice to know both, what it's capable of and how to best instruct this technology, how to best interact with this technology to make it actually useful for you, to make it do the things that you want to do. And I think that starts early. Otherwise, it gets to the point where it's just a magic box and I have no control over this magic box. Well, no, this is a magic box that you can make do really wonderful things.
I think the thing about the way your daughter wrote it up in her 5 points about programming was that she really did capture the essence. You actually phrased it that way in the tweet. And I think that probably helped move that tweet forward because there's nothing technology specific about what she said here. She didn't mention Hopscotch. She didn't mention the iPad. She didn't mention touch.
Right. Yeah.
Is that the thing that we think is missing? We talk about the STEM gap, and I think that, you interact with people on a regular basis and people say things like, I'm not a computer person. I don't understand computers. Is it this essence that they're missing, or is it the details of the operating of the tool that they're missing?
I think it's a translation there, right? It's somehow translating from, the computer does have its own language, its own way of thinking, its own way of interacting with the world. And so I think that there is a place for tools like Hopscotch that sort of lower that gap or sort of bridge that gap, make it go closer from this is the thing that I want it to do. You can tell a person, I want you to go to the fridge and get me a beer, and I can fill in a lot of those gaps for you. And, the languages like Hopscotch, visual programming languages, I think really like a lot of the touch interfaces in general are really kind of lowering that barrier of entry and making like the computers understand what we mean. They fill in more of the gaps for us more. Mm-hmm. I think as Tally went about this project, she just had some success with that.
Now you had this, you told me that you had some experience, working as a teaching assistant, teaching an engineering programming course. How did your 7-year-old go about this differently than perhaps maybe a 20-year-old would go about this?
That's it. So I was a TA at the University of Iowa here. So I got to work with, first year engineering students. This is the first time they've been exposed to programming. I think we used, a little bit of C, a little Pascal, a little Python and things like that. And I think the biggest difference was the willingness to try and the willingness to fail. I think that I can't count the number of, grown people, 18-year-olds that are, given like a blank page, a blank text editor. What do I do next? Right. Mm-hmm. And I got so frustrated because, you've been in this class for 7 weeks and you're telling me you don't know how to start, in C main, right? You've done this a million times, but when the instructions kind of got outside of that place where there was a specific answer mm-hmm. and they had to be creative. And I don't want to delve into a whole educational discussion, but, for a lot of these kids, I think college is one of the first times where every question didn't have a specific answer, mm-hmm. right? The way the education has gone, it's been very sort of convergent, and you have to study for this test and every question has a specific answer that I need you to fill in so that I know that you're ready to go to the next thing. Well, now we're at a phase where the answer isn't given to you. You've got to sort of create the answer. You have to create the process to get the answer. And that was daunting for a lot of these 18, 19-year-old kids. Mm-hmm. And they could not believe that I wouldn't give them the answer. But, my daughter didn't have that same, and that's actually another reason why we want to do homeschooling, mm-hmm. Because I don't want her to go into that trap. I want her to know that the world is full of interesting questions that you can use these different tools to explore. And so, I love that fact that, she saw that blank screen. And of course, there's some nice characters on, in Hopscotch for her to play with and interact with. But, she sees this blank canvas as like an opportunity to color in, Now, I don't know if it's general or not. The best thing you can give my daughter is a blank notebook. She loves I just want to go and fill this thing with my ideas. And I don't want that to stop. And so I'm hoping that we can keep doing things that will encourage that behavior.
Yeah, I think that I like the term teaching kids how to think.
Yeah.
I think that if you give them very procedural, like here are the rules and don't move outside don't color outside the lines, then there's danger. And then 20 years later, you don't realize that, gosh, I maybe should have let them color outside the lines a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I understand our educational system has a huge problem. They don't have any money. I have to move all of these kids through. And so you need some sort of procedure for that, right? Mm-hmm. You need to have some sort of factory for that. But, the world is full of problems that don't really fit that model. And as, things get more complex and more interconnected, I think we need kids that can think outside those lines, that can color outside those lines, like you said. I think programming is a really great way to instill that kind of, sort of cross-functional thinking in them.
Mm-hmm. I haven't figured out how to express it to my kids. I don't homeschool them. They do go to a community school, but this idea of you are powerful is what computers say to me. The idea that, I used to think that it was engineering and hardware that made you powerful. And I'm not an electrical engineer, and I'm not really good with robots, although we do include some of that in the kids' study. But for me, just the power of plugging things together, whether it be transforming data from one format to another, or even something basic like when I star a tweet, take the picture and save it on my hard drive, like basic kind of workflow like that, almost like, life macros. I want a kid to be able to push through all of the things that are standing in their way to be able to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So there's algorithms there's data science, but there's also resilience.
Resilience, right. Yeah, because those things from writing any macro, it never works the first time, right? You got to kind of keep trying it. And then guess what? The world changes and you need to change your automation. I like that thought that you said, that they are powerful. And, there's never, not a day goes by that you don't read about some 14-year-old kid that, got some great Intel science grant because they just thought outside the box and they did something. These kids can be powerful, and there's never been a better time, for any kid, any person to have a great idea and have that idea go. Mm-hmm. Tally, wrote this little 1 hour thing. And I took a picture of it, and now, that's been, shared by, going on 3,000 people now. That's amazing to me, that she lives in a world where she can have an idea and influence that many people. And if she knows that she's powerful in that way, then I'm less worried about, the box that the school system is going to put her in. Have
you talked to her about how far her thoughts have traveled?
Yes. Yeah, I have. She thinks of herself like a little minor celebrity now, a little bit, she's very cute, and she knows she's very cute. And so she's kind of a poser. And so she thinks that this is just the cat's meow. Now, she doesn't really, all she sees is just a number, 2,700 on the bottom of the picture on Twitter. I don't know that she really has a great concept of what 2,700 people is. But she just likes to pretend that she's famous.
But that gets down to
that's good enough for her.
That gets down to empowerment, though. She's like, I've influenced people, right? The number is effectively a bajillion. But I think that what I'm hearing there is that she now has the sense of I can do stuff. My thoughts are important, and I can put those out there. And the public is listening, and that is something that presumably I hope will stick with her. And 15-year-old Tally and 20-year-old Tally will have that same sense of power.
Goodness, I hope so. If that's the only thing I provide her is, that feeling that she can create, and she can make things happen in the world that she wants to happen, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what programming is all about. Thinking about things more detailed as far as algorithms and data science, when you're homeschooling her, are you going to start introducing concepts like that? And at what age do you think you'll get into those kinds of things?
Well, the nice thing about homeschooling is that it tends to be pretty child-led, right? At least the way that we do it. The thing that you kind of do is figure out what are they interested in, and then build curriculum and activities around that, right? So there's a movie called Achille and the Bee, a young girl from the south of Los Angeles that learns how to spell. She does very well in a spelling bee. Mm-hmm. And so Talia watched that, and she says, that girl's good at spelling. She did that because she learned Latin, so I should learn Latin. Well, great. So we spent the last 6 weeks working on Latin lessons.
You are kidding me. That is fantastic. No. She just decided one day.
She saw the movie. Yeah, I'm interested in Latin. Well, great. So our next lessons are revolved around Latin. And so that allows you to springboard to different things, right? Well, okay, let's talk about Latin. Well, let's talk about, is there a country called Latin? No. So then where did this come from? Let's talk about different ways that these words are used. So you can do some vocabulary things. You can do some geography. You can do some history. And so I imagine that those topics will come up as as she's curious about things, right? So when she's curious about, if she ever asks, how many people saw this tweet or where did they all come from? Well, great. Now that's an opportunity to talk about data science. That probably means some homework for daddy to make it accessible for her.
Right.
To sort of, help her through some things, but I don't mind. It's kind of fun for me to learn too.
That simple question could be like a week. You got me excited because I'm thinking to myself, all right, for each, because you got to think about, all right, well, what's the Twitter API? And for each of the people in there, how many of the tweets were geotagged? Right. And you got a whole section on latitude and longitude. And then could you guys build a thing that used Google Maps to drop pins?
Yes. Wouldn't that be
my
fun?
Goodness. See, that makes me want to homeschool somebody right away.
Well, it's really fun because, and they're interested in it too because, it goes, whatever they're interested in, they tend to keep wanting to learn about, and so you have to sort of ride that wave of their interest without running it to the ground and making them bored with it, right? Because, after, if you're trying to explain about the details of the Twitter API, she's still a 7-year-old. So she's like, oh, I'm bored.
You got to hide that, right? You have to hide that in daddy abstraction layer.
Right. Yeah. And even, 9-year-old or 10-year-old Tally might still feel that way. But I think, there's opportunities to sort of, springboard on the thing that you're interested in. Okay. You're talking about, My Little Ponies now. That's something that she's interested in. Well, so they're, it's not Manhattan, it's Manhattans. And let's talk about New York City. That kind of thing. Yeah.
I think that the resilience is what we struggle with. I've met 20-year-olds that just don't have the patience to sit down and solve a problem until it's done.
Yeah.
And
I think
teaching professional engineers the idea of done means done. Like, what is done?
Yeah, I think that's a really important skill. There are very few problems in the world that are just done. There are very few things that you can do that are just, I do it one time and it's done. Because the world changes, if nothing else, right? So one of the last points that I hope that she always remembers, that she wrote on this thing is, you always have to check your work. You always have to sort of continually make sure that, the thing that you thought was done is still done. And maybe if it's not done anymore, well, then you got to try it again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When people or friends and family heard that you were teaching her programming, did they assume, oh, you're trying to make her a computer person? Because that's what my family assumes, that I'm trying to turn them into little cubicle children and they're not going to be outside. And I try to explain to my family that this is about learning how to think and about having that sense that I can do this in any job. I mean, you obviously are very familiar with computers, but that's not necessarily part of your job, right? You're not a programmer, are you?
Not anymore. That's not my day job anymore. I'm in a marketing capacity now. Came here through user experience development, and then from that, did lots of front end development and things like that. So, but everything is sort of a mishmash, a crossover of physical and digital now, I think, is the way that the world is going. And so that really prepared me for this role and more of a marketing role because everything's countable, everything's digital. And I think that's, the world that Tally's going to see too. Nobody really gave us much guff about this. I think they were just kind of amazed that, for a lot of people, programming is just a magical box, right? And I think that's kind of just how they saw it. They didn't see it was, they know that I'm a nerd, a computer nerd, and they figure my kids, going to see some computer nerd things as well.
Yeah, I think that the idea of teaching her Latin or letting her learn Latin without even, like, my first impression as an adult was like, Latin, that's probably kind of hard. But,
yeah, it's really
if you tell the child that it's difficult or that it's maybe not a good idea, we'll wait until you're 12. That's an immediate turnoff. Like,
right.
Wouldn't you say? I mean, if you went up to pick a random 15-year-old niece, I'm sure you have one, I have one, and said, let's learn Latin. It'd be like, oh, Uncle Scott, really? That's probably not for me.
Yeah, child-led, child creative too. My daughter, I happen to like my daughter. I think she's pretty cool. One of the things that's cool about her is that she's got a black belt in Taekwondo. She's been doing that for a couple of years. Wow. So she's got some dedication DNA inside her. She can work on things. She's pretty resilient. But this last winter in her talent show at school, I was like, you should do something with Taekwondo. You're really good at that. She says, no, I want to do a dance. honey, you don't really dance. But, and I tried really hard to convince her to do the safe thing, the easy thing. You do Taekwondo, do that. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? You're trying to do something new. You're trying to grow in a way that you haven't done. You're trying to create, express your creativity. Go do that, right? Why am I stopping you from doing the thing that you're interested in doing? And it comes back to that power, right? You want them to feel empowered that they can shape and change their world. The world's it's going to be, right now the world is wide open to her. It's a wide open canvas. Mm-hmm. It's going to close in on her at some point, but I don't need to be the one that helps her close it.
Yep, absolutely.
So if the more tools I can give her to feel empowered, whether it's a blank notebook or hopscotch or take her on a trip somewhere, trying.
Well, and I liked your description of all the different jobs that you've had. I mean, with a background in computer science and an understanding about how the world fits together, you've moved seamlessly from marketing to front-end development, throughout the entire spectrum, all with the power of those skills.
Yeah. Well, problems, business problems, the things that people are trying to solve don't really live in a silo of a particular discipline, right? It's like, you can't just have the engineering part, you can't just have the business part, you can't just have the design part. They really have to all fit together. And what I like about, now that I look back and see the things that I've done, I have a bit of empathy for all those different disciplines, and I can kind of speak all those different languages. And so when I get, these different cross-functional teams in a room, I can do a couple things. I can help translate between different things, create some boundary objects that help one team's language map to the other team's language. And I can also go to our development team and say, come on, I know you can really do that. You just don't want to do that. But look at Bootstrap. They've done a good job. Maybe try that.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for talking to me today.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Folks can follow Jerry on Twitter at twitter.com/FJSteele with an E. And hopefully we'll see more pictures of Tally programming and taking over the world with her programming skills.
Thank you very much.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.